Hi everyone, my name is Aviad. I'm a senior developer at RPA, and in this video I would like to demo you an attended RPA flow that we have created with RPA Service Manager. What is an attended RPA flow? An attended RPA flow is an automation of a flow that is being triggered by the user itself. It's kind of a virtual assistant to the user to take a task or a group of tasks and do it in a more productive way, in a faster way than just doing it directly with the underlying system. This is as opposed to unattended RPA flow, which are usually automations to background processes, which will be invoked by a scheduler, like will be invoked on specific date or repeatedly on every day or every hour, or being invoked by, for example, an email sent to the system. In our case, this is an RPA flow that is being invoked by the user itself online. And in our example, what we are going to demo is a user that is doing a lot of traveling and wants to report its expenses mileage to the EBS expenses module. So this user has a lot of mileage expense lines. For each day it has a line, and he needs to enter it into the EBS system. Without the RPA flow, what this user will do is will get into the EBS system, will create a new absences report, and then just start to type each line one by one on the expenses module. In our example, what we will provide this user is an RPA flow that will enable him to do it in a much faster and easier way. What we will do is we will provide him a runner. A runner is a one-page application that is generated automatically by our tool with a few simple parameters, and that will invoke the whole RPA flow. What these parameters are: the user will need to put its own credentials. This is why this is an attended RPA flow, because the user actually needs to provide its personal credentials. It will have a mail address to reply to when this process is done, the purpose of this expense report, and then he will be able to upload a CSV file with all the mileage expense line. A CSV file that will look something like that. As you see, it's a very simple table. It has the headers here and then a line for each mileage detail line report. It has a date, justification, distance, and the units for this line. So the user will only need to upload this CSV file, and then he will press the execute button here. This will invoke an RPA process on our Oracle Service Manager, and which will take the CSV file, analyze it, create an expense report on the Oracle EBS system, a new expense report, and then we'll take line by line from the CSV file and add it to this expense report. And once done, it will submit the report and sends back a confirmation mail with the new report number that has just been created for this user. So this is the RPA flow, this is the plan. Let's see how it looks like when we actually run it. This is the RPA runner. As I explained, this is a very simple one-page application that enables you to invoke the RPA. It has three main parts. The first one is the input parameters for the RPA flow. The second part is the output, the result of the execution for the RPA flow. And then at the bottom we have a few buttons. Let's see what we have for our demo. So the first input parameter that I need to enter here is the email address to get the confirmation mail. So I'll just add here my own email. Then we need to put our credentials to the EBS system. And now we need to add the purpose of this expense report. Let's just put here demo mileage expenses report. And the last thing we need to do is to upload the CSV file with all the mileage expense lines. So I'll just I'll push this button, I'll open the File Explorer select window and select the file, the CSV file with the details, the one that we saw before. That's it. Now all I need to do is just to press the execute button here, and this will upload the file, will analyze it, and create a new expense report for me on the EBS system. Here it is. I got a confirmation message saying that the process was run successfully, and if I look here at the second part of this window, I'll see the result of this invocation. A new expense report was created for me. This is the number W155218. This is the message that returned from the EBS system that this expense report was created and was sent to be approved to the manager. And I also need to get a confirmation mail. So let's get into my mail system. And as you can see, I have here a new mail saying that a new report was created for me. On the subject I have the number of the report, on the body I have the message that was returned from the EBS system. And just to complete this demo of execution, let's see what happened on the EBS system itself. Let's confirm that I've actually created a new expense report in the EBS system. So let's open our EBS system. This is our EBS system. I'll just refresh the homepage of the expenses module, and as you can see here, here's the report that was just created, 218. Let's open it and let's look at the details. Let's put it even side by side with the CSV file, and as you can see here, we have a new report that was created. Here is the purpose of this report as we add it to the input parameter of the RPA runner. And if I scroll down a little bit, we can see here the mileage lines, which are the same and equivalent to the mileage lines that we have here on this CSV file. So that's it. We completed the execution and the creation of the expense report using the simple RPA runner, and with a few clicks we've created a full expense report. Now we will see how we can create such an RPA flow like we demoed before. There are basically two parts for this RPA flow that need to be implemented. The first one is creating these REST services that enables OraPlayer server to interact with the EBS system. OraPlayer Service Manager enables user to record UI flows on the EBS system and then encapsulate and publish them as REST APIs. These are the REST services that are being used to interact between the OraPlayer and the EBS system. In a minute we will demo how to create one of these REST services. The second part will be creating the RPA flow itself that is using few REST services that like we will demo how to create to interact with the EBS system and to create the expenses report. So let's get started and see how we do that. To create a service that interacts with the EBS system, the OraPlayer Service Manager has few recorders that enables the user to record UI flows and then be able to publish them as REST API services that can be invoked again and again with the EBS system. In our case, the expenses module is an HTML based UI, so we are using a special recorder that we have for recording HTML or web applications. What you can see right now is on the left side you can see a Firefox browser. This is where we will do the actual UI flow on the EBS system, and on the right side you can see an add-on that we have added, a special add-on that we have added to the Firefox, to this Firefox browser. This add-on enables us to record the UI flow, and then we can edit it, debug it, and prepare it to be uploaded to the OraPlayer Service Manager. So let's see how we record a simple flow with the EBS system. Now the purpose of this demo is just to show you a quick brief of how we record and play and upload a service that runs with the EBS system. You don't really need to understand everything that I'm doing here, and this is not a full-blown training of how to work with our IDE. It is only a demo to give you some idea of how it works and how easy it is to create such services. So let's see how we start recording a service with the EBS system, an HTML service. To do that, we will press here on the top right side the recording button, and then we'll just start to do the flow itself. We'll start with adding the credentials and just go through the flow. You can see that in parallel on the right side the recorder is catching all the actions that we are doing, so it can be played back later. So we are now on the home page of the EBS system. We will get into the home page of the expenses module, and we will record a very simple flow of creating one expense report with one mileage line. We will press on the create expense report, type in here the purpose of this report, let's put it demo expense report recording. Press the next button, and any value that we type in into the UI will be then added as an input parameter for the service that we are just creating. This is done automatically. Now we get to the lines of the expenses report. We will go to the mileage expenses, and we'll just put one line for adding a mileage expense report. We'll put a date, put some justification, select the units to be kilometers, and put here some value for the distance. Then we will press the next button. This will get us to the preview page. We'll press again and submit the report. So this report was submitted, and now let's do some editing on the recorded flow. First I will stop the recording, and let's see what we have here. We have here all the commands that were catched by the recorder. So we opened the EBS system, we typed the credentials and so on. But there's something that we need to edit before we actually upload it. The first thing is, you can see that at the end of this process we are checking that we got to a page with the title says expense report, and we see here the number of this report. So this is a specific information for this specific run, because the number of the report will change over time. We will just remove the specific number and replace it with an asterisk, saying that any report that will be here is okay. And let's do one more thing just to demo it. If we want to have an output parameter for the flow, for example, if we want to have the number of this report, we can take it from the screen. We can take it either from here, or in our case it is also exist on the title of this page. So we will just add here a command called store title, and we'll call this output parameter submitted report. This command will take the title, put it in this variable, in this output parameter, and expose it as one of the output parameters for this new service. Now let's just save this service. I'll press the save button. Let's give it a name. I'll call it demo expense recording. This will save it as a file on the file system. And now the last step to be done before we can run it on the Service Manager is to upload it to the Service Manager itself. So we have here a special button to upload it. I'll press the button. This will invoke my attached Service Manager and will create the new service. Again, you don't really need to understand every step, just to get a general concept of how easy it is to do that. So we have now a new service that is being created on the Service Manager. This is the name of the service, the same name that we gave the file. You can see here all the input parameters of this service. These are all the fields that we have typed in values into it, like the password, the username, the purpose, and so on. And we also have one output parameter. This is the submitted report that we stored by the store title command. So that's it. That's all we need to do. We will press the create service button here. And now we have a new service on our service manager server. Let's maximize it. This is the service manager, and we can get here into the services pane, the services portion of the service manager, and we can see here the new service that we have just created. This is the name, demo expense recording. You can see that it is of type HTML because we have just recorded a web service with HTML UI. And now that it is inside the service manager itself, I can just play it back. Let's just, before we do that, let's get into the service just to see a few details. You can see this is the URL that can be used to invoke this API as any REST service. If you will use this URL, it will invoke the API. These are the input parameters that we will need to send. We have saved the default values here. We can of course change them or remove them and just put it when we invoke it. And these are the output parameters, as we saw, that will get back to us. So now I'll just press the test button here just to be sure that it actually creates a new expense report as expected. You can see here the input parameters, which I can change. Let's change the purpose and call it demo expense report recording 1. And let's change the kilometers to be here, I don't know, 140, just to be different from the previous expense report that we created. And let's press the run test button. So now the service manager is running on the background this flow against the EBS system, and I expect it to create a new expense report on my EBS system. Let's wait for it for a minute, see that it actually executed correctly. And here it is. It was finished successfully. You can see here the status is success true. You can see here the report that was created for me. And now let's go to the EBS system and see that the report was created as expected. So it's 223. I'll get here, I'll refresh I'll go to the home page of the expense reports. Here it is, 223. I'll get in. You can see here this is the purpose that we have added as the parameter when we invoke the report again. And this is the line, the mileage line that we have created. If I'll get into it, you can see here the 140 miles that we added. So this report was created, this API is running correctly. Now I can use this service with the RPA flow or any other tool that I want to invoke and interact with the EBS system using this REST API. Now let's see how can we create the RPA flow itself that does the whole flow of loading CSV file, analyzing the file, and then creating an expense report out of this file. To do that, we will go to the service manager of ORAPLAYER. This is the UI of the service manager. We will get to the automation RPA section, to the processes, and press the plus sign to create a new RPA flow. In this demo, you don't really need to understand all the actions that I'm doing, just to get some initial expression of how easy it is to create RPA flows in ORAPLAYER. So this is how it looks when we open a new RPA flow. Here on the left side you can see a visual editor for creating the RPA flow. We'll just use it in a minute. And on the right side you see a properties pane to add specific properties and values to each step on the RPA flow. So the first thing we need to do is just to give a name to this RPA flow. Let's call it demo add expense report. So this is the root node, and now let's start and add the whole flow. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new expense report. For that, we will press the plus sign, And here we can add any of these building blocks for our RPA flow. We will choose the service building block, which means to invoke a service that we have already created, like the one that we demoed in the previous step for creating a new expense report. But for this RPA flow, I've created a few smaller services that will act as better building blocks for this RPA flow. And the first one will be a service that starts the creation of the expense report. So let's add it here. Demo RPA create mileage report. I just took the whole flow like we have created it on our demo for creating a simple expense report and broke it into three pieces, three smaller services that I can use in a better way for my RPA flow. So the first part was creating a new mileage report. Just create a new report and give it a purpose, and in this stage I'm not adding any lines yet. So this is what this service is doing. I'll press the create and it will be added here as the first block for my RPA flow. Let's see what this service brings with him. It brings the credentials, because in this service I'm logging into the system, and then the purpose. It is all set as input parameters of the RPA flow itself. And I will also select here keep alive, which means that I don't want to kill the session after I'm running this service. I want this service to run and keep the session open, because there are more things to come with this session. I've just created a report and now I'm waiting to the next steps. And the next step would be to read the CSV file, take each line and add it to the expense report. How would I do that? I will press the plus button and select here a loop. And we have a few loops, a few iterations that we can add to our RPA flows. One of them is called CSV file. This is a special loop, special iteration that runs over a CSV file, read its lines, and then I can do whatever I want with it. So now I will just upload my CSV file so it can be analyzed by the RPA flow and be attached to the next services. I'll press here the upload button and I'll upload the CSV file that I'm using for this demo. Now this file was uploaded to my RPA editor. I'm setting here, it is set by default, but I can also set it by myself, that the first line of the CSV file is a header line. As you can see here in my CSV, the first line is a header line. The data comes only from the second line and so on. So now I've uploaded my CSV file, and the next thing, and it is looping over it, and the next thing I want to do inside the loop is call a service that gets the data from the current line of the CSV file, the one that we are currently iterating on, and add it to the expense report. So for that I will press the add button, select adding a service, and I have a special service here that I've created that adds one mileage line to my service, to my expense report. So this is the service, and this service expects to get the line number that needs to be added, the date, the justification for this line, the units, and the distance. And what I need to do now is to attach these input parameters to the values that are being read from the CSV file. How would I do that? I just press here the edit button, select the select value, and say that I want to take this value from the loop itself. And the line index would be the row number that I'm currently iterating. This is taken from the loop itself, so I'll just select it. For the date, I will say that I want to take the date column from the CSV file, the one that is currently on the record that is currently being processed. And I'll continue with the other values. So the justification will be the justification column. The units would be the units column, and the distance will be the distance column. So now I have all the data wired to my service. The line that is currently being read from the file is sending its data into the inputs of this service. And now that I've added all the lines, and again I need to state here that I want the session to still keep open because I didn't finish creating the expense report yet. I've created the header, I've added the lines, and now I need to submit the report. So I'll add another service that I've created. It's called demo RPA expenses submit mileage report. This is doing the last part of creating the report. I'll add it here. It doesn't have any special input. It just submits whatever I've added so far. And the last thing I want to do is to send a confirmation mail saying that this report was created successfully. So I press the plus sign, and now I will select here the send mail building block. And for the recipient address, let me just put my own email. Oops. Here it is. On the subject, I want to say a report was created. A new report was created. And I want to put here the number of the report that was just created. And this is one of the output parameters that I got back from one of the previous services. So I just added by clicking on this plus sign and say I want to take it. It's getting back to me from the from the submit mileage report step. As you can see here, I have here an output parameter called the submitted report. Here I find the number of the report. So I say I want to put it on the subject line. And on the message body, I want to put the message that was returned from the EBS. This is also an output parameter that got back from the submit report. It's called messages. So that's it. Now I've added a step that will send the mail with the number of the report that was just created and the messages that were returned from the EBS system. So I'm ready. I can save this new RPA flow, and if I want, I can also test it on this visual editor as well. Here it is. It was saved, and now I can just press here the test button. Just before we do that, let's see what we have here. Here on the RPA flow, the root node, you can see that we have actually three parameters here: the username, the password, and the purpose of this report. And that's it. On the output, we will get the submitted report and the messages, which would also be sent as an email. But they are also the output of this process. I will set it as the output of this process. So now I will just press the test button here, and this will invoke a test run for this flow. And as you can see here, the invocation has failed, and it failed because I didn't pass the login phase. This is because I didn't put any inputs to the credentials parameters. So let's run it again. This time I'll put a username and a password. And let's put here also a purpose for this report. And now when I run it, it should run correctly. Here it is. This time it ran correctly. You can see that we have success true. And you can also see here the output parameters. You can see here that a new expense report was created, 155224, and these are the messages that got back from the EBS. So this flow was created successfully and is ready to be used by the user. How can I run it from the outside, not from this editor? Let's close this editor. I'll save it again. and close the editor. This will get me back to the Service Manager processes section. You can see here the new process that we have created, and from the outside I can just press the play button here, and this will automatically generate the RPA runner, the one-page application that I've demoed you in a previous step. It will contain the input fields that we have created for this RPA process, the credentials, the purpose, and a field to upload the CSV files, and the output parameters. So let's just enter the input parameters. I'll put here my credentials. Put a purpose and upload the CSV file. And now all I need to do is to press the execute button like I've showed you. This will invoke the RPA process. And in a few seconds we will see that here it is, that and the new expense report was created. We can see here the output parameters like we have seen. So our RPA process ran and executed successfully. And now we can just take this URL of this application and send it to all of our users to be used for creating their own expense report. So that's it. We have just completed to implement the full flow of creating a mileage expense report out of CSV file. These were the steps for creating this flow, and this is how it looks when it is being executed. Thank you for your attention.